Very good morning, class 11th. I hope you all are doing great and you are taking care of your health also. We have finished very successfully. We finished with our chapter, that is respiration in plants. So now I'm going to start with another chapter, that is breathing and exchange of gases. I will not start with plant growth and development right now because I'm taking little break from the plants. So we are going to start with breathing and exchange of gases here, because already just now you have finished respiration, so you can correlate the things and ATPs very easily. So let's see that what we are going to discuss today. First, in this lecture, I will talk about the basic things, basic requirements we need for the exchange of gases. As you can just look at its name, we need to talk about here breathing and exchange of gases. Usually when I ask in the class that what is breathing, everybody knows that it is the if I specifically talk about in our case, it is taking in oxygen and releasing out the carbon dioxide. Basically it is the exchange of gases, right? It is exchange of two gases, and that is breathing. But breathing comes under a broad concept, that is your respiration. So what is respiration? You know the basic idea, that breaking down of food, breaking of food. And food is what? Food is your fuel, because it gives you energy. So when your respiratory fuel break down to release energy, that is called your respiration. Now this we already discussed that this respiration can happen in presence as well as it can be happen in the absence of oxygen. So on the basis of oxygen, either it is present or it is absent. The respiration is of two types, that also we know, that it is aerobic and it can be anaerobic. If the respiration occurs in presence of oxygen, it will be known as aerobic. If it will occur in absence of oxygen, we call it as anaerobic. And now we have very carefully we have idea that what happens in aerobic respiration, that your glucose in the presence of oxygen, it breaks down into carbon dioxide, water, and releases energy. But this is not a just one step process, it completes with the multi step process. Same in the absence of oxygen, there is, if in the yeast, if there is no oxygen, then glucose will change into pyruvic acid. Pyruvic acid will go under decarboxylation, it released CO2 and change into ethyl alcohol. The amount of ATP where it is released here is 2 ATP molecules. And see, I told you that this breakdown of glucose in the presence of oxygen, it is not a simple process. First is the glycolysis, first step, which is a common step between aerobic and anaerobic, that is glycolysis. What is formed in glycolysis? Pyruvic acid. Then this pyruvic acid, it changed to acetyl coenzyme A. It is a connecting link between glycolysis and your Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle is the another step in aerobic respiration. Here acetyl coenzyme A will release the CO2. Then there will be the electron transport chain, in which electrons, they are transported with the help of proteins or electron carriers to form the proton gradient. And the last step in aerobic respiration is oxidative phosphorylation, that is the formation of ATP molecules for using the assimilatory powers, that is your NADH2 and FADH2. That is what we already discussed in my just last lecture or last topic, that is the respiration in plants. So we already have idea now if it is anaerobic, and if it is happening in us, then it happens in muscles only and only if we are doing very excessive exercise. In RBC also there is anaerobic respiration, because RBCs, they do not have mitochondria. So what is happening in case of muscles and RBC? Glucose will change into pyruvic acid, and pyruvic acid will form the lactic acid as well as your 2 ATP molecules. So lactic acid is specifically formed in case of muscles. Total number of, if now we talk about the energy which produced in anaerobic is only 2 ATP molecules. The amount of total amount of energy which is formed after these 5 steps, that is 38 ATP molecules. But in eukaryotes, two molecules we use. Two molecules are utilized for transferring the NADH2 from cytoplasm to the mitochondria. So 38 minus 2, that we are left only with the 36 ATP in case of higher organism. This was about the types of respiration, which already we just discussed in our last chapter, that is respiration in plants. Now here what do we need? The second classification is known as the direct or indirect. If a cell, if a surface of the body or cell is directly in contact with the gases, and it usually happens I can say it directly in contact with the atmosphere, so gaseous exchange directly taking place with the atmosphere, then this type of respiration is known as direct respiration. Example is where lower organism, simple, that is your amoeba, right? But in our case it is not possible, as our cells, they are not directly in contact with the atmosphere. So cells are not directly contact with the surroundings. Example is the higher organism like us, that is the human beings, because we have a separate system, and in that separate system there are the tissues which play a role in the exchange of gases, which we are going to take further in our lecture. So in aerobic respiration, actually what does happen? Oxygen is taking in, we are taking in oxygen, and carbon dioxide is given out. So second classification, direct and indirect, depending on the contact with the atmosphere. Which steps we need for the exchange of gases? First, you need to inhale, right? Breathing, inhale as well as exhale. So we call it as a breathing or ventilation. It is like that in your room, in your house, in your room, there are the windows. And what is these windows? If there are two windows, from one windows it is air is coming in, and suppose on the second window it is going out. So we always say that how wow your room is so ventilated. Ventilated means that yes, there is a passage for the exchange of air. That means ventilated. Wow, fully ventilated. So same is our body. So breathing or ventilation. Second step is the exchange of respiratory gases between the alveoli and the blood. See, your oxygen that which comes in the body, that is dissolved in the blood. Dissolved blood that moves to the different areas, it reaches to the structural and functional unit of respiratory system, that is alveoli. So there is always keep on exchanging the gases between blood and alveoli. Then there is a transport of respiratory gases by blood, because blood is a connective tissue in our body, so it keeps on transporting the things, it connecting the one organ with the another. So here also respiratory gases, they are transported by blood exchange. Then now this blood moves into tissues, and when it moves into tissues goes under various metabolic processes, and during those processes they release CO2, and that CO2 is also dissolved in blood. So exchange of gases, it takes place between blood and tissues, as well as between alveoli and the blood also. what is the actually we are doing? We are using oxygen aerobic, if because we are talking about the aerobic respiration, and in aerobic respiration we are using oxygen. Why we use oxygen? For the glucose breakdown. Why do you need glucose breakdown? To release energy in the form of ATP molecule. So these are the 5 basic steps you require for the exchange of gases. Now we are saying that, see, every time it is not same criteria everywhere in the each animal. So there are few characteristic feature that a respiratory surface should have. That respiratory area should have some features, should have some characteristic. So what is a surface actually? It is that area through which, that place through which gaseous exchange has been taken place, that area. So what should be the speciality of that area? First, if we talk about general body surface, we say that in earthworm we say that the exchange of gases takes place through the body surface. It means your surface, something has to be come in and other gas has to be go out. So if it will be thick, it will be very difficult for the exchange, for the diffusion process, because diffusion is it is a process in which basically your molecules, your gases, they transfer from higher concentration to lower concentration. So that surface, it should be very very thin, or I can write it as it should be extremely thin. In lower organisms, usually sponges, coelentrates, or flatworms, the exchange of gases happens through the diffusion. Like you can quote here example of your earthworm. The exchange of gases takes place by diffusion, so its surface should be thin. Second feature what a respiratory surface should have, that it should be moist, because oxygen usually transferred in the dissolved form. It in the cells, they take oxygen in the dissolved. In our case, it is dissolved in the blood. Sometimes it is dissolved in the water, and after the sometime in the mucus. So that is why oxygen is always dissolved in the blood form. Oxygen is always in the dissolved form, so your area should be moist. Then the area, respiratory area, should be highly vascular. Here I am talking specifically about human beings, that it should be highly vascular means it should be connected with the blood supply. Blood supply means blood. Whenever there will be, we talk about blood vessels, that means vascular connection, blood vessels connection. So in higher organism, exchange of gases takes place through blood. Already I told you that blood dissolve the oxygen in it. So it has the capacity that carbon dioxide is also dissolved in the blood. So more and more blood vessels means more blood supply. So more blood supply means more is the exchange of gases, means maximum is the rate. Then there is should be some respiratory pigments that should be present, which help in binding with the gases, oxygen and carbon dioxide, which help in their easily transportation. Like in our case, in human beings, we have the hemoglobin has have very high affinity for the oxygen, so it carry four molecules for oxygen molecule during the transportation, right? So next is that large surface area. जितना ज़्यादा एक surface area इतना है, एक surface area बड़ा है, so more is the surface area, more or the maximum exchange of the gases. So these are the features or the characteristic which define that respiratory should be at least these properties a respiratory should have when it help in transportation. So here are the different organs for respiration in case of different organism. First, let's talk about the skin. Skin helps in respiration. When skin is playing a role in respiration, that type of respiration is known as cutaneous respiration. And example that is observed in earthworm, frog, so in earthworm and frog, you can very confidently say that the respiration is cutaneous. Why cutaneous? Because skin is playing the role. So as you can see, this surface of earthworm is thin as well as it is moist. So it is a great feature, as already we just discussed the characteristics. So these gases can be easily exchanged. Next is the tracheae. Tracheal respiration, basically tracheal respiration, those in which tracheae is the respiratory system. Through respiration happens through tracheae, especially in the insects. It is a tubular structure. As you can see, it is a network of tubes. These are the trachees. These are the further secondary, tertiary tracheoles, and these are the primary tracheae. So it is a bunch of network. It is a tube, network of tubes. So that is why this is called tracheal respiration, and it is a speciality of insects. In insects, it is very easily seen. Next is the gills. Gills, all of you know that gills, they are the prominent respiratory area in the fishes, and this type of respiration is called branchial. If it is skin, it will be known as cutaneous. If it is tracheae, it will be tracheal. If it is gills, then it will be known as branchial. So here, as you can see, that fish takes water in through the mouth, and in water there is a dissolved oxygen. In water, it takes the dissolved oxygen. This water reach to the surface of the gills, and then they absorb the gases, and water flows over the gills and then move out. In this way, the respiration happens in the case of fishes as well as the prawns. They all are the aquatic organisms, and oxygen is dissolved in the water. That is why it keeps on taking the in aquatic animals, breathing rate is faster. Breathing rate is faster because they are not directly getting the oxygen. They are getting oxygen in the dissolved form. Next is the lungs. Lungs is a feature of the higher vertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, mammals, and this in which the lungs play major role in respiration. That type of respiration is known as pulmonary respiration. It is a feature of amphibians, reptiles, in our case mammals. As you can see, that alveoli is the structural and functional unit of the lungs in our case. So these are the amphibians, reptiles. They are the in these organisms, pulmonary circulation is the observed. Then there are the few others other than the lungs. There are the book lungs also. Book lungs are the speciality of scorpions and spiders. As you can see here, this is the spider, and in spider, book lungs are observed. This is the air flowing in through these are the lungs of the spider. So air flowing through the folds, different kinds of folds. Between the fold, there is a blood, and blood is carrying the oxygen as well as CO2. Book gills, don't get confused. Why I am specifically talking about them? Because they are very, very important for your neat point of view as well as all MCQs. Book gills, book gill, all that is a limulus, it is a crab. In crab, these book gills are observed. That is also in the kind of folds, but they are the different surface area. So these book gills, they are the speciality of the crabs or the limulus, you can mention there. Pulmonary sac in mollusca. This is the specific picture of Pyla. Actually, Pyla belongs to the mollusca group. So they have a shell on their body. So they have the and this they respire through the pulmonary sac. And this pulmonary sac, it is a very you can see that this is a little bit look like a very hard structure, because this is a modified mental. If you recall your ninth class, which is difficult to recall, I know that. So it is a mental, we discussed there the mollusca group, they have a mental hard body structure on hard surface, so that mantle is modified into the pulmonary sac, right? So this is all about the organs of respiration in the different organism. This is all about our today's lecture, and from tomorrow we are going to start with our human respiratory system.